Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning back into Let's Play Chroma Squad. I'm your host, the Ronin of Dreams. On today's episode, we're hitting the Season 1 finale episode. Now, finale episodes tend to be longer, bigger, badder, more plot-heavy and involved than other episodes throughout a season, and in this case, it's also a little bit more difficult. Why? Well, the training wheels are finally off on every mechanic we've seen so far. And while we're getting a new mechanic, well, we've seen it coming for a while now. But first, we have one really random email. And I do want to touch a little bit on the marketing system because, well, by taking the email with the free marketing offer, I wasn't able to show off quite everything with the marketing. Now, we start with 3 different marketing agency options, and we get 3 more per season, I believe. And you can see up front that we get a lot of information, actually. Not only are we getting the main benefit just from hiring them, but we get to see each of the 3 guaranteed fan power mechanics. Now that 4th one is always going to be randomly rolled when we hire them, though. We can also see their per episode flat rate, and that matters for 2 reasons. One, it gives us an idea of how much they're going to charge if we hire them for a single episode. But if we hire them for 3 episodes, we do get a discount. You'll see that shortly. It also gives us the idea of how much it will cost us if we break the contract. Now, I'm actually going to demonstrate that momentarily, but you can break a contract at any time, and doing so means you have to pay a small penalty, but that's also because you don't pay anything up front when you hire them. It literally comes out of your income at the end of the episode, so you don't really even have to have money on you for marketing, which is actually quite powerful for you. Now, probably still only relevant in a big challenge run, but it's still a thing. Now, I'm also doing a lot of weighing of options. I'm 1 fan power short of 225, which would be ideal for the current situation. So instead of going with the blogger route, I've decided to go back to Mad Folks, who we had last episode, because I want to take advantage of the higher audience rate in a finale episode. Now again, I'm still slightly off from getting the extra income conversion rate, but I can at least get the event for a flat $80 extra, which may not be huge, but it still adds up, and I'm trying to save money for Season 2. Now, our season finale shows us the return of the Transitmancer, and because of the director instruction preview, we see we have 3 different combat segments. So, all the way up front, we already know it is a little bit longer. Now, thankfully, finales are wonderful pieces of development, and I really do like even this introductory one, because it ties in with the Season 1 premiere by bringing back the Transitmancer, and it also takes all those training wheels off of tutorial mode. Now, the first fight here with Transitmancer is easy, and, well, when you have 3 phases, and you're seeing the boss up in the first phase as well as later on, it makes sense that this isn't his actual powerful form. It's just a, shall we say, intermediate skirmish. And it's one with plenty of puns. But this particular fight features 6 Nutcrackers as well as Transitmancer, and because of Transitmancer's health, you could theoretically beat Transitmancer turn 1. I say theoretically because that's just raw damage output, but given the tactical scenario, it's much more likely the earliest you can defeat Transitmancer is turn 2, unless you literally built your actor choices just to turn 1 Transitmancer in Phase 1 of the Season 1 finale. Something you could do, but I would never recommend it. Now, because this is a finale episode and we have 4,000 audience as our audience bar to fill, there's a long segment here where I'm just trying to build up some audience. It's why I'm going after the minions. You wouldn't have to, but I do want that audience bar to fill, and I do want to fulfill director's instructions. Now, I mentioned before how transforming will not only move your characters, but can move enemies, and here's a good example of that. One of the Nutcrackers moved completely away from where I could hit them, but the other stayed nice and close, so I didn't even have to move shiny in order to actually hit him. But by moving everybody up there, I forced the other 3 Nutcrackers to approach us. Because they're all melee, it's very easy to manipulate them. And you see, we already got the Finish It star appearing above Transitmancer, but I'm going to take this turn to finish out the Nutcrackers. And we also see how bosses really start building up in threat from here on out. Most bosses will get 2 actions, and if they have skills, they can use those skills on either of their actions. Now, Transitmancer's just beating on us with a light pole at the moment, but he does showcase one of his talents, or skills rather, before I get to finish this fight. But I am getting to set up this fight the way I want it to, namely taking out all the Nutcrackers this turn and setting up for a team weapon finisher, as promised, next turn. While he takes his teleporting green light action, and while I set up the teamwork for the finisher, I will mention one thing. The results of Dr. Soap's ultimatum response shows up in this episode as part of the plot, but we don't actually get the scenario yet. That actually appears in Season 2. I slightly misremembered my timing, so these things happen. Now, if you're going for a weapon finisher, you can see how I paused for a moment there to make sure every other ranger had their weapon raised. That means their weapons are off cooldown, and you do get your weapon finisher. In our case, it's named the Wave Motion Cannon, because I'm still using the Super Robot Wars inspired team, thanks to Corvus Moore. And here the Transitmancer is taunting us, really. The plot is solid for a season finale, and it's solid from the standpoint of being a legitimate episode, without some of those quirks or interesting little tangents that we've been getting in some of the episodes up to this point. Now, the team initially talks about going to see Cerebro, but we find out that the enemy minions are all called Mudmen. Why? Because exactly what those 2 shell shields do when they appear. They're literally forming out of mud. It's another reference to putties, and I think everybody could see that coming from a mile away. We do get a new track for this. A little bit more chill after that little intro riff, but I think you can see where my tactics are going to go here. Stunning pose to daze as many as possible, and remove threats as I can. The winning in 4 turns is actually fairly easy. What's slightly more difficult is getting all the 5 team attacks for it, but, well, that's kind of why the shell shields exist. They are meant to really give you the opportunity to build up solid team attacks. And trust me, there's no better feeling than removing a tanky goon or grunt character in one shot. It's even better if you can do it to a boss in their first appearance, and I may try to do that in future, but right now we're just culling the herd. There's not a whole lot of things that are very interesting with regards to this particular fight. This is a filler fight, and if it were anything other than Season 1 content, it would be almost inexcusable for a finale. It just doesn't feel as put into place as it would be in a normal episode. Also, Bread Crumblers currently just a little too tanky for my tastes, so I had to use a sword from Wangtron to go ahead and eliminate him. Mostly though, I'm not really having to worry about things. I'm healing here more for the extra 40 audience score from healing with the assist, which adds on to the 15 base for using a skill by the assist. Techie gets 20, and most characters have between 15 and 20 for that. Really though, there's not much to say here. Now, Bread Crumblers are going to be important in Phase 3 of this finale for a very particular reason. I originally suspected that one of their abilities was locked because of the whole tutorial-like nature of the first season to a Season 2 and beyond level. But I was completely wrong. And we're going to see that shortly, but right now, hey, I need one more team attack and I can win on turn 2? Technically, this was turn 3, but the counter only ticks up at the end of your turn. So we had all the time in the world here for this particular mission, even when rushing for that director destruction. We do have a sign that a lot of the plot in the episodes is, I guess you could say, lampshaded or curtained away, so that you do not have to listen to massive amounts of dialogue that would be present in a legitimate episode. Now, because I did not change from the default settings for this reveal, our mecha is called Mecha. But now we know we have a mecha. I could have named it Shingetter, or any number of big giant stompy robots from Super Robot Wars, but I didn't for one reason. It's the reveal. And this is, hopefully, the last time I'm going to be supplying all the names for the different things. I'm going to be opening up to the thread for folks to just submit every piece of customized kit for the characters very, very shortly, or submit series they want to see be given a homage, whether it be Super Sentai in Japan, or a Power Ranger series here in the States, or literally anything from the various tokusatsu genres. We get a couple more puns, and you're going to see a lot of those because, well, that kind of really started heavily, as far as I'm concerned, with the American Power Ranger series, where the boss monster of the week would be puntastical. But here is one boss monster mechanic that can be somewhat annoying. We have to defeat 6 enemies, and no, that doesn't usually count the boss for that, which may be a bug in the code, but probably not. What we have to do is we have to wait for the boss monster to summon enemies, and that can get very annoying. Now we do see Transitmancer use one of his other skills, Red Light. Red Light stuns a character, and like how Stunning Pose is used on enemy minions, for us, a stun is literally the end of your turn. That character cannot act, it cannot use any of their actions, it is effectively done. We also see Transitmancer has a lot more HP. That 2-man team attack I just did, I'd have to do a lot more of. And we also see the slight bug with Stunning Pose that I mentioned in the last episode. You literally get drop them to 0 dodge and 0 counter, but they actually don't seem to have their values changed. Thankfully, Turnabout is fair play, and we counter with a critical after dodging by Corvus, which is a nice thing. But really, whenever you get a defeat X number of enemies in a boss encounter, and they don't spawn immediately, you're usually having to do some damage to the boss before it will even summon any. And then bosses tend to do a very annoying thing, which we should see, I believe, right now, actually. Yes. Every boss monster, in addition to their normal skills and their normal attacks, has a basically clear out move, which knocks everybody within 1 or 2 squares, depending on the boss, back entirely. And you see how far back that knocked Mr. Fahrenheit, which is really a shame because he's about the only character on this team at current who doesn't need to use a weapon skill to kill a bread crumbler. I'm maybe salty about that. Later on, this will get a little bit easier to handle, and I could have made helmets for characters, which may have given them more attack, but as it stands, well, I made my choices, I have to live with it. I also said, the training wheels are off, and you're going to start to see exactly how much health I'm losing on certain characters. During my recording this, I got dangerously close to losing characters. And I never had a problem with this last time, but it possibly because I'm saving money rather than getting helmets, or possibly because of certain tactical plays that happened with enemy characters, I was riding the danger zone rather thoroughly. Also, movement! It's just bothersome enough to get me sometimes. And despite the high critical rate I do have on Corvus right now, it wasn't enough. So I'm kind of torn here between, do I finish it off or do I heal somebody? Namely, Wangtron, who's at 52%. And yeah, Wangtron just kind of draws a lot of aggro in this fight. It's kind of amusing. But while we have a little bit of a downtime in this particular fight, I'm actually going to touch a little bit on tokusatsu as a whole. Now, I've referred to the genre of tokusatsu quite a number of times during the course of this LP, but I've never really explained that. Tokusatsu is actually a collection of different subgenre shows. Notably, Super Sentai, which this is very much patterned after, is only one of those subgenres. We really have a number of genres in there, and the Japanese in the current era actually use those as means of targeting certain demographics or age brackets. Here, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and most Power Rangers since have always targeted the young teen demographic fairly well, but the various tokusatsu shows in Japan are a lot more varied than that. You have Super Sentai, you have Kamen Rider, you have the Metal Heroes shows, and you even have Kaiju. Now, for some of you that may come as a revelation, but others who have already looked into tokusatsu or know a bit about the culture on their own, that's not a surprise. But the whole big, hulking, huge, monster-destroying cities wasn't something that evolved independently. In its own way, Godzilla set the stage for future Super Sentai shows, because the giant mecha versus giant monster fights kind of owe a lot to Godzilla for that. But the whole genre of Kaiju is referenced in this game for that pretty much sole purpose as well. It's quite refreshing, really. And when we get into more discussions on tokusatsu and a more relaxed view in general on the gameplay, I'll go into much deeper detail, but I did want to touch on that a little bit because it becomes relevant. Namely, we specifically say Kaiju battle references, which is cool, and at the same time, kind of surprising. Here we go. You'll notice that the bread crumbler just now threw a stick of dynamite. Now, there's a couple of different visual options for that move. I've seen Legend of Zelda style bombs, I've seen grenades, and I've seen dynamite thrown. And that's the skill I was referring to when I said I felt like this was something that was a Season 2 and onwards ability. It's not very dangerous. Most skills like that tend to keep to the same damage range as the basic attacks. But what is dangerous is that it is an AoE attack. And right now, I'm very limited on my AoE healing. Aside from the assist basically hopping into teamwork mode, I don't have AoE healing. And it's problematic when you get a high number of AoE attacks. Not so much here. Yes, I do risk a lot. Talo can't heal himself with the assist teamwork move, and I don't have heal Dukin up. But I play it risky, and I don't get burned here. I could have very easily. If Transitmancer had attacked Talo or Mr. Fahrenheit on either of his attack actions, they would be going down. But because he puts himself in this particular position, I ignore the last bread crumbler and really risk it all. I don't have enough for the team weapon attack finisher, and you can see I am very concerned here because I don't have the damage on the estimate to knock him out. The estimate is fairly accurate too, but instead I just play it risky, I go ahead and hit him with a team weapon attack, and I get lucky for the second turn in a row. I don't plan on playing this risky in the future, and I'm actually surprised I got away with it here. It would have been a great time to show what happens when a character goes down, but instead we get to set up a wave motion cannon again as a normal team attack method and finish the boss. You do lose a lot of audience when a character goes down, and you can't really pick characters back up, so you lose access to finishing moves. But we got away with it, and we're going to get a good bit of extra plot. In fact, most of the episode from here on out is going to just be plot cutscene. Oh, wait. Was I about to forget about Second Lives? Yeah. Because they didn't introduce the mechanic, it looks like it's about to fade to black here. And then they pull out, hey, remember the mecha that Cerebro just talked about? You actually do need it, because, oh look, Second Lives. Now, the default call-out for the mecha in Chroma Squad is Imagination. And that's about as bad as the default transformation call-out, which is Ready, Set, Chromatize. It's still here, and I'm running it, because if you don't change it, you get that interesting bug where you call out Imagination twice. Now, we do get a awesome little cute cutscene for the mecha, and like the transformation cutscene, we only get it once in the game. But here's the current mecha fight dynamic. We have a hit percent, we have a combo multiplier, and we have our single HP bar versus a multi-stage boss bar. Now, the current format of mecha fights, in a way, is a little lackluster. I'm just pushing for the risk because there's no real threat in this. This is the tutorial mecha fight for good reason. I do not remember if the combo hit percent chance is actually relevant for this fight, or if you auto-hit because tutorial fight. But notice the call-out for activating the special skill, we get access to a Sword Strike. Now, because mecha fights are going to be changed, and from what I hear the change is somewhat drastic, until the Director's Cut edition for the PC comes out, what I intend to do is I intend to just show off all the different skills available on the mecha. Later on, I might open up to the thread choices for what you want to see the mecha evolve into being long-term, but in the short term, I feel like showing off the skills because the mechanics are changing. The hit percentage isn't nearly as relevant or quite as RNG as it currently is. I know those changes exist, and I'll talk about them when they happen, but mecha fights are going to be more common than not from here on out. And now we're going to get to the plot. This is, it's a good recap of what happened during the tutorial, including directly offering your conclusion on what you decided to choose, in case you somehow forgot and didn't want to check your email. Now, if I remember correctly, the Season 2 premiere actually is the episode that changes according to your option. I may still be remembering wrong, but I'm pretty certain on that one. I do apologize for thinking it was the finale episode that changed, but I've only had one playthrough, and sometimes my memory's not the best. But, as you can see, we even have an ominous little cutscene. Who could that be? But of course, it's Dr. Soap. He still wants Cerebro. Anyway, with our bonus audience percentage, we have 5,000 audience, which is huge compared to the episodes from the mid-season. It gets us a fair bit of money on its own, and 150 more fans, which almost doubles our current fan count. It's great to get. We also get, at the end of the season, a performance rating, which shows how much we spent versus how much we had as total income, and the total fans we received from everything but emails. We also get our new contract, so theoretically I didn't have to save the money I did, but it just felt bad to have a minor upgrade. In any case, I'm going to show off a bit about the Mecha tab as part of the Season 2 premiere. Well, actually I show a little bit off of it now, but I don't really go into it much because it's a different crafting, and we'll get to that next season. But by next season, we'll be running a player-made squad. In any case, I hope to see you again soon, folks, and thank you for joining me so far on this journey into Let's Play Chroma Squad. Stay frosty out there.